Three, two, one, action. Hello and welcome to Lessons with Mr. D. This is a new and exciting way of you getting some lessons from your actual teacher in the comfort of your own home. Now, this is something completely new to me and something completely new to you. So we are working together on this. Do be kind. If things aren't working, if it pauses, or if there's long breaks, or if I'm having to edit things as we go along, do not panic, do not worry. We're in this together. We will work it out together. So if something looks like it's going wrong or I make a mistake, that's fine. I will edit things as we go along, and hopefully by the end of it, I will be a master, just like you guys are masters already. So this is going to be a new way for us to interact with each other on lessons. Still use DB Primary to message me and to send me your stuff and ask questions. However, I will post these video links each day for you to have a look at, and that way you can pick up and do them whenever you like. You can do them all in one day, you can do a little bit, you can have a listen to them and then come back to it. It's completely up to you how you want to do it. If you're already using something like Bite Size or one of the other programs, I may get time to show, and I will highlight some other websites and useful resources. If you're using something else that you find more appropriate for you, or it's working where you are, absolutely fine. You don't have to use these or have a watch of them. That's completely up to you. If you want any help with anything, give me a message, send it to me on the email, and I will try as best as possible. However, this is the main approach that I will be doing going forward for the next 7 weeks. So here will be where I give the lessons and the work. If you're doing something extra or you need something specifically that isn't this, then I'd be happy to help you where I can. Pardon me. So this is a completely new program. Hopefully I should be in the corner somewhere so you can see me, but you can also see the screen as well. And this screen is fairly familiar to you. I'm just using the Smart program that we use at school that I plan all my lessons on, so you'll recognize all the features, which is quite good because I'm able to write and draw things and explain things as well as you seeing it on the screen yourself. So let's get rid of that. Again, I'll do these mainly for literacy and numeracy every day, and I'll try and do a science one and a topic one. However, they are a little bit more tricky because obviously science experiments aren't going to work at home because we're all not in class, and the topic lessons should be easier. So we'll just see how things go, and I'm really excited that this will be a nice way of us to get some lessons and some contact time together and hopefully keep up with our schooling. Any questions, please do just email me, DB Primary, message me. That is absolutely fine. The great thing about these videos, like I've said already, I think, is that if you want to pause it, just press pause. If you need to go back because I haven't explained something very well, or you need to listen to it again, rewind it back. If you have an emergency, you need to go outside because it's really sunny and play, you can press pause and come back to it another time. You can do these lessons whenever you want. There is no time frame. However, after the lessons are finished, I will be available on Zoom from 11 till 12 for an hour, and people can come in and ask me questions if they have any questions on the lesson or they need any help, and I can give advice if you need it. Okay. I've got a bit of a cough. I'm not poorly, I just haven't spoken for so long. And that's all, don't worry. Without further ado, let's get on to today's lesson. I'm going to start with literacy today. First lesson, you don't have to do it first. There'll be a maths one, you could do that one first if you want to. This is just the first one that I'm going to do ever, so I thought I'd give it a little bit of a title. And this week, we are learning to explore non-fiction and information text. We're going to be exploring non-fiction and information text. So a few things before we start. You have, just bear with me 1 minute, I'm just going to get a water. Okay, I'm back. Water. Where were we? Exploring non-fiction and information text. So a few things that we need to understand about the title. We've got this word non-fiction. Now we're going to be looking at that later in the lesson. Just so you know what I'm talking about. And information text. Now we'll look at this later on in the week. The one thing I wanted to point out is this word text. That when I say information text and non-fiction text, a fiction text, that word text refers to a piece of writing. So it's a writing in a book, writing on a poster. Could be writing in a journal, a magazine, any piece of writing that you're reading. That's a type of text, and it's going to fall into a bracket of fiction and non-fiction. Usually. So let's get on to our first little introductory task to see how much you already know. A bit of a sorting task to begin with, and I'll make more sense on the next two slides. But you're going to have these books, these pictures of books, and you're going to have some statements to sort through. So the first thing you can do is sort the books, the front covers, see if you know if they're fiction or non-fiction already. If you've put a book into non-fiction or if you put a certain book into fiction, why? Why have you done that and how do you know? How do you know that that's a fiction book? How do you know that it's a non-fiction book? Secondly, have a look at these statements and read them. I'll read them to you as well if you can't see them properly. And again, are they statements that agree with non-fiction or are they statements that agree with fiction? I'll explain how you could do that. So on your piece of paper, I should mention that all the lessons that I do, you should only ever need a piece of paper and a pen. If you need to print anything out, you shouldn't have to, but I will upload any documents that I use for you to use as well. So the first thing you do is make yourself a little grid, lines down the center, a line across, and do two columns, fiction and non-fiction. And with the books, you can probably do that in your head. Do you think that's a non-fiction book? Do you think it's a fiction book? And then with these statements, you can read out, and do they go into fiction or do they go into non-fiction? If you're feeling really, really brave, I've put this little diagram in the corner. This is called a Venn diagram, and this is another way of ordering information. So you can see it's similar to my columns, my table method. However, I've got this bit in the middle. All that is if you think something is not quite fiction and not just fiction or not just non-fiction, it's somewhere in the middle, then you can put that statement in there as well if you think that there's anything that goes in both columns. That's a way of organizing information that applies to both statements or both columns. In our case, it's fiction and non-fiction. So I'll put that back at the top. Again, read out these statements. Are they features of fiction or are they features of non-fiction? And I'll put those over here. I'll make the table a little bit smaller for you. Bear with me. Oh. Right, I think we're ready. So you got your table, and you can do these in your head. So these books, are they fiction or non-fiction? You've got Celebrate Hanukkah. Hanukkah is a Jewish festival. You've got We're Going on a Bear Hunt. These are mainly Nora's stories and Nora's books. Why do I brush my teeth? The Cat in the Hat, Harry Potter, Trains, Guess How Much I Love You, and Bugs. Are these books fiction or are these books non-fiction? Or are they both? When you've done that, again, probably do that one in your head. Have a look at these statements and see if you can put them into your table. Made up by the author. Read in any order. True facts. Entertain the reader. Read in order. Inform or teach the reader. Illustrations. Tells a story. Photographs and diagrams. Characters and settings. Beginning, middle, and end. Split into sections. Content, index, and glossary. I'll leave that on the screen for a moment. You can pause it if you like, so you can have time to fill in your tables. Later in the lesson, we'll go back and we'll see if you've got any of them, if not all of them, correct. I'll just leave that up there as well. Have a think about why. Why, if you've put one of these statements into this column, or if you put a statement into the other column, why have you done that? Why do you think it's fiction? Why do you think it's non-fiction? Super. I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. You just press pause. I'm not going to sit here for a couple of minutes. But press pause and have a go with that. And we'll go back through it later on in the lesson and we'll see how you get on. Right, super. So you should have done that. Made your own table in your books and put these statements where you think they go. So these are features of fiction and they are features of non-fiction. But what is non-fiction? What is this text type that we're talking about? What is non-fiction? Think about if this was a question in the class, what would you say? How would you answer this? What would your answer be to non-fiction? Have a little think in your own head about what you would say. What do you think non-fiction is? If you're not quite sure, maybe go back to those books and why did you put them? Why did you put those non-fiction books in that column? Why did you think they were non-fiction? That might help you come up with some sort of explanation. My explanation of how I describe non-fiction is it's writing, so it's text that primarily deals with real people, real events and places. It has basis in fact and not fiction. That sentence just means it concentrates on factual things, on things that are real and not fiction, not made up. So those great stories like Harry Potter, those made up characters, those made up places, these made up things are great for our imagination and great for exploring different worlds and great for just getting to a different imaginary place if that's what people like to do when they read. However, non-fiction deals with the real people, the real events and things that have actually happened. So just going back to our task, one of the reasons why I put this in there, that there are some things that you might have thought fit into both. I won't go on about this too much. However, some of the things that came to my head just then are illustrations. Sometimes fiction books have illustrations. Sometimes non-fiction books have illustrations. When we have pictures in non-fiction books, we do usually call them photographs and diagrams, but you might have had an illustration, a picture of something. Another thing that came to my mind just then is, yes, non-fiction is about those real things, those real people, those real events, but I'm sure many of you know stories or books that are based on a true story. Who's seen a movie or who's read a book where it says before you read it, the events are based on real life facts or based on a true story? So with that in mind, you could say that a fiction book could be based on real life events. So it could be a bit of both. It could be a story that's made up but in a real place, or it could be a real life story that's kind of been adapted to help the reader and to help it be more entertaining. Something like Harry Potter, definitely not one of those that is completely made up, but I'm sure you know lots of stories that are kind of based on true events. Some pirate books, some old storybooks about Vikings and the Egyptians, based on real events, but they could be a story. Going on a little bit, we'll go back on track. I do tend to go off on a tangent, as you know. I will try and get myself back on course whenever I can. Fiction based on the real, not the made up. And very quickly, we'll go through some types of non-fiction. So non-fiction doesn't just have to be things like textbooks and information text and encyclopedias. You could have things like essays. So when I was at university, I had to write lots of essays about different things. They were marked, and they're pieces of writing about, you could write up an experiment, or you could write up a diary. Those would be types of non-fiction text. You could do a biography or an autobiography where you're telling about your life or somebody else's life. An interview, that's a type of non-fiction. We've got newspapers and magazines. They tell us about real things. They give us information about what's happening in the world. We've got feature stories. What I mean by that, you could do a story about if you wrote up a match report, let's say, that could be a feature story. Encyclopedia textbooks, those are the main, I think that's what we mainly think of when we think of non-fiction, those books that give us facts. But there are also many other types of text that are non-fiction as well. And then some of the purposes of non-fiction, I've already started writing these down. The first one is to inform. Apologies for my writing. I'm doing it with the mouse. So inform sounds like information. Yep, it's to give you information, to inform you about something, to give you the facts. You have another purpose is to persuade. Now, instead of just giving information, persuading is different because you're trying to make the reader think the way that you think. So if I was going to persuade you to trade your Pokemon cards, I would have to make you believe that that was a good thing for you to do. If you could persuade Mrs. Kenny to give no homework, you'd have to write something that Mrs. Kenny reads, and when she's reading it, you're trying to make her think the way that you think, to make her think that homework should be abolished, homework should not be given to school children. Lastly, you can have to entertain. So yeah, fiction books entertain us by exploring our imagination, but think about David Attenborough and all of his amazing documentaries. They entertain us, don't they? Lots of magical facts about the animals of the world. Super. Come back to this in a bit later. These are some of the words that are found in non-fiction. And I think before we get onto that, let's go through those answers then. Let's go back to your grid and let's see what are the features of fiction and what are the features of non-fiction before I get you onto a task. So go through the books first. Celebrating Hanukkah. Yep, that was non-fiction. Hanukkah is a real life celebration that the Jewish people celebrate. So yep, that is non-fiction. We're going on a bear hunt, a famous child story about a group of families. Can't go under it, can't go over it, we'll have to go through it. That one. Yes, it's a made-up story. It's fiction. Why do we brush our teeth? Again, I assume that this is information to tell us about why teeth brushing is important. So that would be real-life facts. That would be non-fiction. The Cat in the Hat. Lots of funny riddles and rhymes there. That is a fiction. Harry Potter, we've already touched on. That is fiction as well. Trains. Probably about facts about trains. If it's facts, if it's real, it's going to be non-fiction. Guess How Much I Love You, one of Nora's books about a rabbit and a hare. I think, no, they're nut brown hares. They talk to each other, so it's a bit made up, but it's cute and it's for small children. It's a fiction book. And The Big Book of Bugs, all about bugs, all about facts about bugs. Bugs are real life. That will be non-fiction as well. Super. Give yourself a big tick if you've got that right. Super. Let's get rid of. Oh, not going there. Let's get rid of these things. Pardon me. And let's make our grid bigger so we can go through these statements, these features. Are they features of fiction or are they a feature of non-fiction? Made up by the author. Well, if something's made up, it can't be about a real life event. So if it's made up, it's going to be fiction. Let's go down this column first. True facts. Well, if it's not made up and it's true, it's real, we know that it's non-fiction. Real or true facts. And next one in this column, read in order. So what that means is, do you have to read the text in order? If you just picked up the book, let's say if you picked up the Harry Potter book and I just opened it to a random chapter, would that make sense? Probably not. You have to read Harry Potter in order. You have to read a story in order for it to make sense. So if you have to do that, it's usually fiction. Now, some complicated authors can write books that go in many different, so you can start in any order, but usually wrote what I said, not what the text said. Usually, if you have to read something in order, it's usually because it's a story and it progresses in that story mountain that we have sometimes looked at. Illustrations. Now, again, we said this is a tricky one, but because we've got photographs and diagrams, we can assume that when we're talking about illustrations, we're talking about those pictures, or whenever you read a front cover, it says the author's name and then it says the illustrator's name, or illustrated by. So pictures that accompany a story are usually called illustrations, and they are related to fiction as well. Illustration. I'm going to start over. Illustration. We've got, again, photographs and diagrams. We've explained this, that pictures that are in non-fiction, pictures that explain the real life facts. If you've got if you're looking at the Big Book of Bugs and you've got a picture of an ant, and you've got labels and diagrams about different parts of an ant body, photographs and diagrams are pictures that usually appear in non-fiction. Photographs. think about newspapers as well. Those pictures in newspapers, they're photographs that photographers take, aren't they? Diagrams. Diagrams being like the big book of bugs. If you've got a picture of an ant and you want to draw lines and labels to show all the different parts of the body of an ant. Super. Beginning, middle, and end. Well, if you remember how to write a story using the story writing, you'll look at those. You have the beginning where you talk about characters and your settings, into the middle where you might have a dilemma, a bit of a conflict, and a resolution, your end. A common feature of fiction and story writing. Beginning, middle, and end. A little bit neater, so you're trying to keep the presentation nice and neat as well. Read in any order, yes. So a good thing about non-fiction books is that you could use the contents and you can go to the part of the section that you want to. Another way to explain that is, imagine if you've got a big encyclopedia. An encyclopedia is a big book that has lots of different facts in. And this was an encyclopedia about animals. So it was a big book about all the animals. However, I just want to find facts about cheetahs. Do I need to start from the beginning and read about ants and antelopes and aardvarks? No, because I just want to know about cheetahs. I can just go to the part of the story, part of the book where it talks about cheetahs. I don't have to read it in order like the storybook. So in non-fiction, you can read in any order or find the bits that are important to what you want to learn about. Inform and teach the reader. Yes, if you're giving information to inform, we looked at that's one of the purposes of non-fiction is to inform. Tells a story. That's this one. Fiction, we've talked about this. I'll whiz through these now. We should have got the idea by now. Characters and settings. Fiction, they help us explain where we are in our made-up stories. Split into sections. Fiction books are split into sections, but we usually call those chapters. Sections like headings and subheadings. There are non-fiction. We're looking at headings and subheadings later on in the week. Sections. Keep writing what comes into my head. Contents, index, and glossary. Those are how we organize the information in our non-fiction text. Glossary. So your contents. The contents page is that page at the front, and that tells us usually the headings of each the parts, the headings that describe the information that's going to be on those specific pages. So let's go back to the big book of bugs. You might have in the contents, the first bit might be about information or introduction to bugs. So it might tell you what a bug is. And then the other pages might be about bugs with wings. Other pages might be about bugs that live underground. And you'll know from the contents what that part of the book is about. And it'll tell you the pages to go to. So if I wanted to find out about the wings or bugs with wings, I could look in the contents, find out the part that talks about bugs with wings, and go to that page. If it wasn't in the contents, if the information that I was looking for wasn't clearly in the contents, and say I wanted to look at wasps in particular, but there wasn't a part of the contents that talked about wasps, the index at the back of the book arranges all the keywords that feature in the book in alphabetical order, so I could see in the index if it has the word wasp, and then that will tell me the page where the word wasp features. And lastly, the glossary goes through some of those VIP, those keywords, and explains their meaning as well. Super, so now you know the features of fiction and non-fiction. And that leads us nicely onto our task today. I'll do this quickly so you guys can get on. Two things. So we would be using the books in our classroom, but we're not in our classroom. So using your grid, you now know all the features of fiction and non-fiction. You can go into your books in your bedroom or your bookcase or wherever you keep your books and have a look at them, see if you can sort them into piles, obviously tidy up at the end of it. Are they fiction books? Are they non-fiction books? Go through your features, have a look. If you're not quite sure, look through the features. Does it have headings and subheadings? Does it have an index, a glossary? Does it have a I will at the end of this maybe find some of my books and show you what I mean by some of those features. Does it have illustrations? Is it about a made-up thing? And then when you've done that, have a look through some of the non-fiction books. Don't worry about the fiction books. Just stick to the non-fiction books for this week and complete the word study sheets. So these are the word study sheets. I will upload them if you want to print them out, but you shouldn't have to. You can just copy them into your book. So let me put those onto a new page and I'll explain how to use those. Right. So first, you can make a list of all the words that are unfamiliar to you. Any unfamiliar vocabulary. So read through the non-fiction books, not all of them, skim through some of the pages or the ones that interest you. Are there any words that you read and you think, oh, I don't quite know what that means? Maybe make a list of them. If you haven't got any words or you can't think of some, I have made a list for you to go through as well, and I'll show you that later on. Once you've got your list of maybe 8 or so words, maybe have a look through the non-fiction books, have a look for those features, have a look through these features in your non-fiction books and see if you can find any unfamiliar words that you don't know what they mean. You have to be able to say them. If you can't say them, then you'll need to go back to a word that you can say, that you can read, but you don't know what it means. Then you can use these lists, use the list of words to complete the word study chart. Again, I'll copy it into the email with the video, but you can copy this into your book with a ruler quite easily, keeping it nice and neat. How I would do it is imagine that this outline is your page. You could do this looks very similar to our bingo, how we set out our bingo grid on the whiteboards. So imagine this is the whole page, this outside, and you can do 2 lines down the middle, 1 line across, and then you can fill out these sections. Put the word that you're going to study in the middle. I'll wait for those things to go away. Shoo. Right. Put the word that you're studying in the middle, and the first thing you want to do is find the definition. What does it mean? You'll have to use a dictionary if you have one. If you don't, I'm sure Google will help you with the definition. If you read the definition, don't just copy it down if you don't know what it means. So let's say one of the words that you choose is, let's pause there. Let me get just some examples. Let's go back a step. I'm going to get a fiction book and a non-fiction book, and I'll do this properly. I told you it was going to be a bit messy. I'll get a fiction book of mine and a non-fiction book, and I'll show you some of these features. Bear with me, pause there. Struggling to find one.
I've hiding all my books away.
And that's slightly annoying. Because I'm moving house, I've put all of my books away, and I have lots of fiction books, but all my non-fiction books have been stored away. I have found one, a book here, book about fixing up your home and how to do things yourselves. So this is a real a book about facts about how to fix your home. So the first thing that you'll see that we talked about, it's got those contents and all the different sections of the book are on there. A couple of key features, you got your title and your headings and your subheadings, pictures and diagrams, I can pick this book up and read it in any order. If I want to find out about wallpaper, cutting and pasting wallpaper, that's a page I just flipped up to there. It makes sense just to read that page on its own. Other features were Glossary and Index. Now, I don't think this book has those features. I will double check. They're usually at the back. No, I think this book just highlights the keywords like a glossary would, but throughout the book. So you might be able to see here that the word in bold, laminate, and then you got a bit of writing there to explain what laminate means. But sometimes they don't do it like that. Sometimes they put all of the VIP words in the back and call it a glossary. So where were we? We're on to our task. Make a list of unfamiliar words and then pick one of those words and find and fill out the word grid, the research word grid. What have I called it? The word study sheet. That's correct. So I can flick through. Imagine you're reading this book. Let me have a look through. So I've looked at all the features. Yes, it does have those headings, subheadings. It has keywords, has illustrations. Let's see if there's a word that's unfamiliar to me here that I could study. Oh, here's one. The first sentence says, using your skill set. Now you are something of a DIY, do-it-yourself, maestro. That's a funny word. I might research that word. So I might write maestro in the middle. Maestro is a funny spelling word. Oh, I don't want that. That's the highlighter. Let's go into the pen. Let's make it a little bit thinner. Maestro. M-A-E-S-T-R-O, a maestro. Now, maestro looks a little bit, if I'm doing a bit of background knowledge, a bit of predicting, it's always good to just have your own little guess. To me, it looks a bit like master, or so maybe it's something to do with master. Who knows? I'd have to look for the definition of that word first. So I'll get a dictionary. If I don't have a dictionary, I do use Google. However, yes, Google might give you an answer, but if you still don't understand that definition, you haven't understood the word. Yes, you have the definition, but you're no closer to know what it means. So if the Google definition doesn't help you, go ask somebody. I'm looking at this word maestro. I've got this definition, however, I still don't understand. What are the syllables? Syllables are those beats in the words. Syllables, maestro. How many beats, how many sections of the word are there? You can put your hand underneath your chin, and every time your chin touches your hand when you say that word, that's the number of syllables. So maestro, my chin touched my hand twice, so it's got 2 syllables. Maestro, 2 parts of that word. A picture of a video. Or you could do a video if you wanted to. You could do a visual or a picture. So you're going to need to know the definition to be able to understand what a maestro is. Again, some words are used in different contexts. So you might have different meanings for the same word depending on how it's used. You could write that word in a sentence. Now you know the meaning. You could write your own sentence. You could look at synonyms, words that are similar, and you could look at words that are different, antonyms. That would be a good thing to do for today. Sorry it's gone on a bit. I will get smoother. It will be a bit quicker. But anything the way you think I'm gibbering or I'm going on and on, you can just skip that bit and go forward. Or if you need to go back to something, you can go back. So that is what I would do today. Have a look at some non-fiction texts in your own home. Decide how you know they're non-fiction or fiction. Then take your non-fiction books and do the word study and look at some unfamiliar vocab. If you don't have any non-fiction books, I will try and put up a website that has a list of some books, but I'm sure most of you will have a selection, or you can find some books and decide whether they are fiction or non-fiction. If that is you and you can't find anything, or you're still struggling to differentiate between the two, don't worry, you can still do this word study. Here are some unfamiliar words that I found: unique, sequence, social, period, segment, adapt. You can have a look at these words, pause the video if you need to, write them down, and maybe choose one or two of them and fill out your word study for those words. So that's all for today, I think. Sorry it's been a bit long, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. Next lesson, we will recap some of the features and we will look at some of the skills that we use when we're reading non-fiction and information text. So yeah, have a go at that, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.